Yeah, and I also want to mention we're gonna record this session, so afterwards we'll share it just within our community, and you can guys can watch it back if you're thinking like, oh, what actually what did he say about my artwork? Um, and yeah, then I think let's get started. Um,
All right.
do we do we have Richard with us? Is Richard here?
Richard, going once, going twice. No, Richard.
There is a Richard. He's unmuted, but there is no sound coming from his mic though.
Okay, well, I'll just, just talk about this as well, in a way that everybody can benefit. That's what I always try to do with these portfolio reviews. Because there's so many things that is not going to be specific to that image. So, for example, this character right here, I love, I love what Richard did here. It's innovative, it's different, it's fun as well. Like there's humanity, not humanity, but there's like this warmth to these creatures here, and then it's this really fun way of having a mouth too. Some things I wrote down just as I was looking at this, I was like, this is amazing, this is wonderful. And with these other ones, I was thinking they feel a bit random. Random is fine as well.
Hello?
Hi, is this Richard?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Sorry about that.
Oh,
I don't know
no
what happened
worries.
there.
Thank you for showing us your wonderful work. It's beautiful.
Thanks. But sorry, you can continue.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I just thought that this one, the idea is a bit random. So perhaps I'm missing some sort of context that takes away a bit of the randomness, but that was just my initial feeling. This one here, it it also feels like, even though this one is a lot more of a theme, it's a queen bee, it also feels a little random. So, for example, this big hole, I'm not sure what the purpose of that hole is, or these straps, and things like that. And
Mm.
usually what I find people will gravitate towards is like really great ideas where it's like, oh, you see that pouch? That pouch is special because that's, gonna fit those, that jelly cat thing that's floating around or something like that, where a perfect example is like if anybody's seen Avatar 2, The Way of Water, or I think that's the title. Everything in there is so well thought out with lots of purpose. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a place for randomness because look at Super Mario Brothers. Number one animated movie of all time now. Random like no tomorrow. Everything's so random. You got these plumbers, and for some reason there's like a talking mushroom guide and they're fighting these turtles and stuff like that, so there's definitely room for the randomness. So this one as well, I don't know the full context. It looks super cool. It looks super cool. This one, I'm not sure if this relates to this because there's these big swords, but it does feel like a different style here. This one feels like less atmosphere, more illustrative. This one feels like more atmosphere, a bit more realistic. Was this the same world, Richard?
Yeah, I started off with the one on the right,
Mm.
and then I kind of wanted to put in the character so I'd meet the one on the left.
Love the one, like the technical skills here in the one on the left is really cool. Uh, did you use like any reference for that, or that was like out of your head?
Um, it was mostly on my head, but I did try to look for as much like reference as I could.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm asking because there's a different level of realism here, and there's more of a illustrative feel on the one on the right. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I would just try to be more consistent. Um, you know, make one closer to the other. With this one here, the queen bee, one thing that I wonder about is like there's this thickness to the jacket, which makes the jacket not feel as poofy. It feels more solid, right? It feels more rigid, even though
Hmm.
the texture of it feels like a poofy jacket, which makes it a little bit confusing, right? And the sleeves, you see how they have these big open holes there, and then the thickness of this material, again, it's like it's interesting because it feels actually quite thin, the thickness of this material, right? Because we could see the lip and we could see how thin that lip is. So if you want to thicken it, I think it would make more sense, like off the bat, visually, and especially if this stuff was animated, it might it might feel a little odd that a really thin sleeve like this would be able to retain its form even when it's pointed upwards with the gravity kind of trying to pull it down.
Mm.
And then the thing about the hole. So I would just kind of think a bit more about each of the things here and, with a bit more purpose.
I think it's meant like a shape, like a little bit as a beehive. I do feel like if you have the teeth of the jacket maybe on the side, it would maybe be more designy. I do like the puffer jacket of the other side, like that created that puffiness. But I also question a little bit the material of the queen bee there with the jacket, what it is. But yeah,
Okay.
awesome work, really cool.
Yeah, thanks. Oh yeah, but yeah, the whole was like kind of a beehive thing, but I
Yeah.
guess maybe I'll take it away or try and make it more apparent.
Yeah, and the last thing I just want to mention super quick is, you know how to draw cast shadows. So over here, I love the concept, but you have these moments where like there probably should be a cast shadow here, but there isn't, and it's just this gradual darkening because, right, because like this is the thing that is causing the shadow on the backside of this creature. And you have a cast shadow here. So that means that in this world, cast shadows exist where there's a sharp edge. So that means like once you lay down a rule, you got to apply it to everywhere that's applicable.
Okay.
I like the smiling cucumber, which is on the ground.
Yeah,
It's super random, but it's funny.
Oh,
really
thanks.
great concept. Really great overall. Wonderful. All right. Thank you
Thanks.
so much, Richard. We'll go on to the next one here. So is this person here?
Hello.
Oh, yes.
Hi, how's
Yes.
it going?
Hi. Uh, I hope well.
Well, you're doing well. Like, I really like your work. It's really fun, and this eagle one is probably one of my favorites, I would say. It's very interesting. This is has a very uh, cinematic kind of atmosphere going on, which is really fun. Um, in these scenarios, a lot of things get pretty gray. So I would just look out for how much saturation, even though these parts are not that saturated, there's a good variety of hues here, which I don't know. I think I would think about reworking those, creating more of a unity amongst the foreground and really working on like having that feeling of like this unified, perhaps darker foreground going into the
Okay.
background. Um, so,
That one is like I think it's yeah, I think it's the first time I did like a paint over. So a lot of the fog and the fencing
uh-huh.
is a photo, and then I just mirrored it on the other side and tried
Oh,
painting it in. So
cool.
there'll
Oh, what
be
a
like
great
a
idea.
mixture of real elements, and then yeah,
It's
it's
wonderful.
good to know that the painting needs like blending a bit more or
Just like, you know what I mean? Like some unity amongst all this stuff in the foreground to create this sense of a more clear sense of space. It's very simple things that you could do, right? And then the creature itself, I do see some structural issues, you know, like if I was to kind of trace it the best I can, then we have, and I might be off a little bit, you know, but you just have these little kind of structural things where it's like, okay, well, if this is the front of the face, if this is kind of like the line of symmetry and it's going like this, then the other one, ideally, it would probably go like this, not not like this. But if it's ending, oops, yeah, if it ends like here, then is that the size and shape of the head that you want? I'm not sure. So you're gonna want to kind of like rethink that a little bit. But then also in the uh, legs here, they do seem a bit um, like if something is supposed to be symmetrical, they just need to feel symmetrical. They don't need to actually like be the exact same, but they do need to feel like it. And if we're doing this kind of a thing, then over here, you're just gonna want to maintain that like, okay, well, is it gonna be that short? Uh, Even that still looks kind of starts to feel funny to me. So I would just kind of keep playing around with the angle of it until it feels like it's facing me enough. And then it starts to feel like the same legs, but just going in different directions. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Okay, cool. This one, and yeah, I'll just speak about this one for a second here. This is one of
Okay.
my favorites because it's so neat. It's so fun. Um, this is what kind of takes it down a notch for me because this tone here is brighter than just about every other tone here. Like there's a nice little highlight on the beak, which makes sense because that's the focal point, perhaps, of the viewer to focus on the face, right? And so generally, you want to think about, well, what's the focal point and what what do I want the focal point to be, and what are the focal points that are there? My brush isn't working. Oh, because I'm using an eraser. Okay.
What is what you want to focus on for your portfolio? Like, what direction do you want to go in?
Right now is I want to focus a lot on creature design.
Cool.
Um, so there's kind of a mix that I work on every now and then. There'll be like humanoid ones, which I would consider creature design still because it's like separated enough.
Mm-hmm.
But that is like what I want to get into specifically.
Right
There's
on.
like I remember, I think you were talking about it in a previous one, portfolio review, where you mentioned about, or there's maybe there's another video but about focusing your attention on getting really good at something
Hmm.
specific before focusing on something else. So I don't want to spread myself too thin trying to do other stuff. This
Totally.
one seems like the most fun, and I have the most fun doing it. So I want to develop this the best I can first.
Great. One thing that will really take this concept to that next level is you design the hands more with the idea that you're designing these hybrid hands that are like half human, half eagle,
Hmm.
as opposed to human hands with a little texture of some eagle skin. You know,
Okay.
there's there I feel like there could be a very big difference, right? Kind of like Zootopia or Robin Hood, the old Disney animation. They all have hands, right? Even though they have paws or whatever, they all have hands, whether
Yeah.
it's like wings or whatever. But they are not human hands. They're not human hands with animal texture. They are paw hands, or they are
Yeah.
feather hands, right? Eagle claw
They.
hands.
I really like the like it falls into a similar one is the I've forgotten what they're called now, but in the Zelda Breath of the Wild game, the bird people have they look like gigantic hands, but it's feathers of the individual digits on the fingers, if that makes sense.
Hey, and I'll take your word for it. I haven't actually played that. This looks really cool. Sounds really cool too. But look, you remembered it, right?
Yeah.
That's what's gonna happen if you do some real nicely designed eagle person hands. I feel, it's gonna really take that stuff to the next level. Also, I would think about things like uh, having the texture tell a bit of its history. So, does it have rough hands, perfect hands, like it's royalty and never gets into battle? Or, are there tiny, like, ornate kind of things on him, kind of telling a bit more of the status of this person? Maybe it doesn't have any stuff, and that's telling the status of this person. Uh, and the weapon could also kind of tell a bit more about the history of the person, so like how new is that weapon? How many battles has it been in? That kind of thing. And just start to create this story. All right. And one last thing is this top one here. So this is another thing where like everybody can kind of probably use some of this info for other things. You have this thing that's a giant thing. Then you have this tiny little person that's in front of this big tree. This big tree is taking up more space than this giant thing. So I just wanted to kind of like play with the idea of shrinking down that tree a bit, right? And then you have this giant thing. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
cool. Yeah, it kind of falls back onto the eagle one as well. You said about the focal point being like nothing detracts from what you want the audience to look at.
Yeah, yeah, and also like absolutely, and this is also like the feeling that we want people to have. Like, how big is that? How dark do we want that to feel? Uh, and start to kind of design and go about the artwork in that way. All right. Well, this is wonderful. And how do you pronounce your name? I don't want to screw it up.
It's Kia.
Kier. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Kier.
Thanks.
All right. Let's go on to the next one. M or Shun. Is Shun here?
Yes, hi.
Hello, hello.
Hey, hey.
Very cool work. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, I love the painterly feel to this. I really like how you're not picking simple angles of like perspective or simple angles of the people that you're drawing or
Mhm.
this creature. It's very, this one is actually quite difficult. So I kind of looked at this bottom corner one because I felt like it had some good opportunities there, but also it
Mhm.
has some things where it's like a bit distracting.
Mhm.
So, which, you know, it makes sense. There's so much going on. There's like a big city and stuff down there, and there's like this
Mhm.
extreme background with the foreground. And then you have these different lights. So, one thing that we want to do all the time with like as things get more and more complex is to think, how do we simplify the experience of looking at this thing? How do we kind of group things, perhaps, things like that? And I was just like thinking that the background, right, could be separated a bit more from the foreground, those
Mhm.
lights, the feelings of them. You could always add some lights back in there. And then the other thing that I feel like is this wonderful opportunity are the red lights and how they might affect this image, right?
Mhm.
It helps to, first, it helps to create some fun color in a more neutral kind of desaturated kind of illustration.
Mhm.
And then second, it just looks cool, and and it helps to group the foreground from the background. Again, it's like we want to do cool, epic, very complex things a lot of times, and the way to do it is to figure out how to do it in a simplified kind of way, like a way where we can easily digest what we're looking at.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Very cool. Yeah, so like this one here, when we look at it, it's like, how do we simplify? Again, like, how do we simplify what we're looking at? Well, there's, it is a bit difficult to see what's going on over here. Like, if you just
Mhm.
glanced at it, you know? So then all of a sudden we can go, okay, well, how do we make it more simplified, you know, more simple to look at this? And understand that where where this creature is, where this character is, where the arms are in relation to the character and you know the background.
Mhm.
So how do you go about doing that? Well, you could ask yourself a bunch of questions like, could I make this part darker? Could I make it lighter? Or maybe vice versa. Maybe it's not the background darker or lighter, but it's the foreground. It could be a different color. It could be
Mhm.
edges. It could be many different things. And you just want to kind of go through the list and see what your possibilities are.
Mhm.
All right. And then, um, yeah, as I start to look at this a bit more, you definitely want to draw through your figures so that you get the anatomy a bit more kind of. Let me just do a little something here. So,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's still some issue with the legs
uh,
on the left character.
oh, right.
With
So,
both of these artworks regarding background, it was quite complicated for me because I had to focus on characters for both of them, and for both character designs were already pre-established. And at the same time, I wanted to work in the background, but I kind of couldn't really um, balance both of them. And like on my station, there is also a process video. Like there are a lot of iterations, especially for the left artwork, where I tried to redo the backgrounds so it makes more sense and looks better. But yeah,
Oh, that's cool. So you're saying that this was client work? This is like pre-existing characters? It's client work?
yeah, the right one is not client work, it's for a friend, and the left one is client work.
Oh, okay. Cool. Well, yeah, so we have this back here, and then we
Mm-hmm.
have, like scapula. You got this shoulder coming down over here. Okay, that's fine. Where's the other shoulder? Is it over here? And you see where the elbow is?
Mm.
And it's
Too
just,
long.
yeah, it's going downwards. Um, this one here, we have this like arm that's very kind of different from this arm, so we need to make sure like they both feel at least feel even. I keep
Mm-hmm.
using the word feel, and it's very much on purpose because there's times where something is painted in that feels right but doesn't look right, or sorry, isn't right. Like technically,
Mm-hmm.
there'll be times where that happens, but um, as long as it feels right, I feel like that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes you'll see, even like in real life, where something doesn't look right, but it is real. That is a photo of that person or whatever, or that sloth, but you're just like, it doesn't look real. So there you go. Yep, I think that's the main things I wanted to kind of talk about there. Wonderful job.
Great, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
wanted to ask if, like overall, hard skills like values and I, um, I have some self-doubt regarding to my painting skills.
Mm-hmm.
This is what keeping me away from creating more of my personal,
Mm-hmm.
like concept art and stuff like that. So, I just wanted some clarification if this is something I can already work with and what can be improved.
Okay. Well, like there's different levels to things, right? So like, do I feel like this is professional? Yes. Do I feel like it's
Hmm.
beginner professional? Yes.
Hmm.
I hope that's okay to say. And
Yeah.
like, if it was applying from my studio as a person to work with me on projects, out of a scale of 1 to 10 for structure, I would say you're at about a 6. The
Hmm.
structure needs more work, but there's a lot of really great promise. It just needs more work.
Hmm.
Your painting levels, I would also say it's about a 6.
Hmm.
I hope that helps. It's
Yeah.
really the subtleties and the ability to create images that are easier to digest when you're glancing at it.
Hmm.
All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you so
I
much
think
for
what
your.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a great explanation. Thank you.
My
I
pleasure.
think
If you want a couple suggestions, Viktor Kalvachev has a freaking amazing course all about how he tackles the human anatomy and teaches it in a way where it's like almost like a game. It's really fun and you learn a ton. And even if you know how to draw people, it's really great to learn how he thinks about people because it's unique. It's his own way. He's not teaching somebody else's way.
if
Hmm.
I can
Yeah.
add to that a
Sure.
little bit, Victor Kovachev is actually doing a webinar, which you can also upload your portfolio. And who
Oh, yeah,
knows, it
yeah.
might get picked again and you might get a review. However, you do need a schools himself, but he is really good, like with giving that feedback.
His
And I
drawings are
think,
so good, and his class
yeah,
is phenomenal. That's one of the classes where I'm like, I want to take some time, go through it nice and slow one more time, because there's so much value.
yeah, and if you wanna get picked, like until today, this will be the last day that you can submit for your portfolio for that one. And Jonathan will make sure to put a link in the chat. And by the way, Bobby, I think what you mentioned with simplification that will help many people because I'm also like keen on like trying this like different techniques, and you get the character or the point can get lost, like what you want to say and how to speak more clearly, and because there's some really like lovely designs, it's just making sure you see it right away and doesn't get lost in the details, right?
There's really, yeah, exactly. And there's really great promise. There's really great, like a base understanding of things. The only thing is, subtleties is what brings believability. And that's such a simple phrase that, you can think about and apply to everything in the world. And I guarantee you, you're going to be like, oh, shoot, yeah, that does apply to music, to gestures, to, simple cartoony hand gesture, whether you're doing a straight, like every finger forward, high handshake kind of thing, or is there a little bit of a wiggle room, just some subtle looseness to that handshake? It says something different. A little scuff on the shoe is a subtlety that talks about the story of that character, right? Subtleties in somebody in the way that they talk to you. We're not even talking about art anymore. All of a sudden determines if you believe them or not. Subtleties brings believability. That's
I
a
love that quote.
that and that's like from Jason Seiler. I learned that
Oh,
many years ago, and he's one of the Schoolism instructors too. He teaches realistic portrait painting as well as caricature. And painting side of things, if you want to learn subtleties, like I'm a person that loves learning from many different people, even the same topics, because when you learn the same topics and how different people think about the same topics, that's the best way to create your own way of thinking from extrapolating from these different people, little bits and pieces, things that make sense to you. And then a lot of times you'll find that you're creating the glue between one person's thought and another person's thought, creating your own style. But the best thing is that your style is then based upon a lot of foundation because you're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? And that also makes your style that much more difficult for anybody to be able to do because you traveled a path of knowledge or many paths of knowledge to be able to extend even further to create your own style. So a bunch of the courses that come to mind is like people like John Burton, really cool the way that he talks about painting and composition and all that stuff. Nathan Fowkes is another huge one. And another one is Tonko House, just off the top of my head, but there's many others. The Tonko House one is one of the most popular ones. Same with the Nathan Fowkes one. Craig Mullins, if you're at an advanced level, I would take the Craig Mullins one and just like watch the dude paint, hear his thoughts. Because there's so many things that he'll say in there where like I literally got up and I was like, I gotta pause. I gotta just sit there and think about it, make myself a coffee and sit there and think about it for half an hour and then continue the video. It's so good. I'm talking too much. Let's move on.
no worries. Tina, are you here?
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, hello. All right. So you go by Tina or Christina or?
Well, I go by both, but I prefer Tina.
Okay, okay. Very nice to meet you, Tina.
Mhm.
So I just wrote down a little like choosing light direction. Sometimes we get into situations where we have to make up the light direction. Sometimes we get reference that may have a very confusing light direction. Like, for example, the squirrel one, I feel like there's definitely reference involved, at least, right?
Yes.
And the reference that you're using is on a very bright day in the forest, and there's no direct light hitting this creature. There's just a ton of ambient light coming in from everywhere. And that can get very difficult to try to figure out and start painting. If there's ambient light, if there's high ambient light everywhere, then that means perhaps there would be a bit more. Let me just get on the right layer here. That might mean that there's a bit more light on something like the paw, right? If you look at the face is getting a bunch of ambient light, and there's angles of that face that get a little darker or whatever. I would start to lean more into surfaces that are getting much closer to each other, creating ambient occlusion,
Yeah.
right? Or starting to. Okay. Yeah, I just start to
Tell me, tell me.
think about the areas that would have shadow,
Mm.
that I don't know. I feel like what I want to say is just to make a bit more bolder kind of statements. If we're making everything blend in a little bit too much, then it could feel airbrushy, right? And when you look at your artwork, there's really good stuff there. But the way to kind of bring it up a level is just to be aware of the airbrushiness and what's kind of causing it.
Yeah, use I mostly use airbrush um pencils because I used in the past to use only the pencil types of
Mm-hmm.
brushes, and now I'm using the airbrush like for everything almost.
Yeah.
I make it small, I make it bigger. Just there's a video of yours in which you make a paint demo. You paint the face of a monkey only using the default brush of Photoshop,
Yes.
and that inspired me to try this. And actually, it works super well for me.
It's
And I always
wonderful. Yeah.
paint
Uh,
with that brush. Yeah.
yeah. With that monkey painting, even though I have soft edges, my
Mm.
brush is 100% hard edge the whole entire time.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because this is the thing. So again, this is like a wonderful little tip. If you haven't heard about it, or if you haven't taken my course before, this would most likely be something very new, because the way that I use a brush, it's very different than like 99% of the other artists that paint, using Photoshop or Magma or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Because when I started, it was Photoshop 2 or 3. The internet wasn't even around yet, so I'm just alone by myself trying to figure it out. And by the time I get together with a bunch of other artists, I'm like, oh, you guys all paint different. And they're all like, no, we all paint the same. You paint different. I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I do. So, anyways, how I paint differently is if I'm using the flow, which in Magma's case is called density, but in Photoshop it's flow. If I turn down my flow, if I want a soft edge, I could turn down my flow. I could turn down my opacity. And now all of a sudden I'm getting a soft edge, right, using a completely hard edge brush. And then with that same brush, though, I can make a hard edge, right? So you can't do the opposite at nearly as well. If I have a soft edge brush, I can make soft edges, but I can't really make a hard edge. With a hard edge brush, you can make hard edges and you can make soft edges if you know how.
Yay. Mm.
All right. So,
I
You
need to
make
do
it
more.
look real easy, but it takes a lot of practice to get it right.
Yeah.
my goodness, like I started using Photoshop over 25 years ago.
Wow.
So you get
Yeah.
better at
Keep
it.
using it. Mhm. Yes.
All right. Well, wonderful. Why don't we keep the show rolling here and then we can do some freestyle questions and stuff at the end as well and just chat or whatever.
Okay. And thank you, Bobby.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much, Tina. All right. Next here is Sophia.
Hi.
Hello, Sophia. All right. So, first thing I want to do here, wonderful stuff. First thing I want to do here is I want to get the eyedropper tool. And I'm just going to eyedrop some stuff and look at your saturation. I feel like that's the first thing that we can talk about is try to work on your paintings with less saturation in general. Like almost like imagine that a little chunk of this is gone. The little chunk of the color picker is gone. Right? And so instead of like you know what? I could probably just make a layer. Let me see here. The other thing I wrote down was like symmetrical compositions. There's this feeling of symmetry in 3 out of the 4 images that you have here. Symmetry it's a nice composition as well. But a lot of times it has this vibe of like something very serious and official, like a church, a wedding, a funeral. Um, so I would just kind of keep that in mind, when you want to use a symmetrical composition. And if the vibe is not that, then perhaps you want to think of a different kind of composition. So that one's simple.
Mhm.
Um, let me make a layer here. And this layer, I'm going to set it to saturation instead of normal. And so the saturation, I'm going to go down to this kind of a level. So that's for this stuff over here. It's foreground stuff. And it's crazy how much something will kind of change if you're just tweaking just the right things. Feels a bit more natural. You could bring back some of it, but just like use it more sparingly. Like I like sprinkles on a cake. Okay? Because when you bring it back, right? Think of like you could feel a giant shift. And look at the nice kind of attention that this little spot gets now. I'm not sure if this was an important spot. I kind of thought maybe it was important. That's why I kind of left a bit of the saturation there. But that's what happens when we're just a bit more conservative with our saturation. Then when we need it, oh man, we put a little bit in there and it just blows up. It's just like, wow, that really feels saturated. Does that make sense, Sophia?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That helps a lot.
Fantastic. Just that little simple thing alone is going to take your paintings to another level. I guarantee you.
Mhm.
The purple, it has less saturation than the green, but by nature, purple, a little bit of saturation goes further than, you know, a little bit of saturation with yellows, perhaps.
Mhm.
All right, so wonderful job.
I love the aesthetic of the purple one. It's really
Thank
cool.
you.
Yeah, it's really, it's a fun feeling. All right, thank you, Sophia.
Uh, I have a question,
Oh,
Yes.
sure, yeah.
if I can, because I'm kind of struggling to where I see myself. Like I can
Mm-hmm.
imagine to work in games or like as a concept artist, and I just wanted to ask, like, now that you saw my work, like maybe where would you see my work in a kind of way, like more in a visual development kind of way, or color key artist, or as a concept artist, any direction, kind of impression?
Um, Currently, I don't like, if I could be brutally honest, I don't feel as much of a direction currently. Uh,
Hmm.
because, especially because this one is so different. This bottom one is so different from the other ones.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So if you wanted to go into visual development, I feel like you're close. You know, you do need some. I would like beef up and concentrate on your compositions and start to study and explore using different kinds of compositions. The other one is the saturation for the painting. Um, and then the third one is just because I don't see any like big opportunity or any like really well thought out textures here. That's another one where
Mm.
I'm wondering, like I would love to see, like for example in this one, this dessert thing is so important. Definitely want to feel the texture of that if we're talking visual development artist, and same with the textures of the hands, because with every texture in animation, you're designing the texture. You're not just going, okay, this is rock, so rock texture. Like
Hmm.
the Trolls movie is a perfect example where even the fire is this felt kind of designed fire, which is so cool.
If I can add a small thing, like your question resonates so much with my struggle as well. Like I'm not sure what I want to do yet. I like various things, and it can fit maybe in various things, but do please think for yourself, like what makes you, want to do art, and think of that question and what is what you want to focus on, because that will help you, push through the struggle and push through the nitty gritty things that you actually don't want to do, and find like the fun stuff for you and what it is, and explore that. And to me, like you can go either way of those things you mentioned. It's just what do you want to do, and go for it.
All right. Thank you both.
Absolutely, you're welcome. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do in the beginning because I didn't feel like I had enough experience doing any of those things to know what I want to do.
Mm.
That's
You know, a lot of people can find themselves in that position as well because, like, I just knew I wanted to do art. And then I went into animation because that was the hardest program I could find in my area that took like hardly anybody. You know, so I was like, if I could get into that and I really like the artwork that the artists were doing there, then I feel like I'll have a better chance of being an artist. Yeah, and that was it. So when I went in,
Yeah.
I was like learning layouts and all this stuff. What do I want to do? I don't know. But the best thing that I did was I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna pick one, and I'm gonna keep going down this path until I can get a crappy beginning, entry level job. And then at that point, I'll decide if I still want to do that. And so the first thing wasn't actually creatures. The first thing that I picked was layouts. And
Right.
I was drawing backgrounds, right? I was drawing backgrounds and ended up getting a crappy job, oh, whatever. First job in a very makeshift kind of studio. Uh, and it was for this cartoon show called Rescue Heroes for Warner Brothers Kids. And I was getting, it was a very entry level job. And then after that, I decided that, okay, do I still want to go down this path? See, I think the thing that really screws up a lot of people, especially beginning artists, is that they'll dabble in things and then they leave before they get any value. And they'll dabble for like 6 months, learning 6 different things and not being able to be employed in any of those things. Right? And for my strategy, it's like get to the point where you can get employed, and now that skill is something that's going to help you. Instead of taste testing, I just pick one and I'm like, let's go until
Mhm.
it's a much better strategy, I think, especially in the beginning.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much. We're going to go on to the next one, I think. Great discussions here, Patricia. I like your little bits of input.
Oh, you too.
All right. So here's the next one. Ira. Is Ira here?
I see them. I don't
Okay.
hear them,
Okay, no problem.
but
No
they're
problem.
here.
Well, if you want to join in the
Ira.
conversation, just say hi. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's all good.
If you have issues with audio, then just type in the text chat and I will be your voice.
Perfect. So when I was looking at this, I wrote down color, intensity of light. So what do I mean by that? The color of light, so I'm referring to this bottom one. What's the color of this light and how would it affect these various things? A lot of times with night scenes, there's not much variety of hues. There was this really cool video that I was watching the other day where it was like, it had, I don't even know what it was, like 10 Lego pieces or something. They're all different hues. And it was 2 sets, right? One is in the daytime, and the other one, right underneath it, the light is slowly starting to go away, like a time lapse. And you start to see the colors change. And you see like yellow stayed yellow for quite a while and then starts to turn green and so on and so forth. But by the time it starts to turn green and the red starts to turn almost like black or like dark purple, I think the purple and the blue, they were so close in hue already, right? So, and the green was also extremely close in hue to the purple and blue. It's just interesting to see how uh, the ambient light will affect, or the color of light will affect the different hues. And right now, I feel like there's just too much variety in hues here to make it feel believable. And then the other part to it is the intensity of the light. Um, with different kinds of light, you have different strength. Right? In this case, you have these flashlights that have just too much intensity everywhere. And I'm not sure how these things in the foreground get so bright either. But um, it's a super simple kind of thing to start fixing, is just to be aware of it. You know, that's a wonderful, super cool thing about art and like studying light. It's so fascinating how it affects everything. I went on for a bit. Are you still there, Ira?
She's still here.
Okay.
I think
This one was really cool too.
very.
Hmm.
I think it's very various, like what kind of style she's hopping. Different vibes. Each painting,
Hmm.
for me.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. With this one here, it's really the perspective that I would love to kind of fix up, and unfortunately, that means like this would be a redo. Um, why perspective? Because when you look at like the rate that these kids start to shrink as you go back, the rate at which this horse, uh, proportions start to shrink as they go back, doesn't fully kind of like fit with me. And then the bookcase is extreme. It goes from big bookcase to very small, and then a tiny little chair. Love the colors though. The vibe of it and the lighting is like this uh, really wonderful, colorful feeling place without it feeling too saturated. This one, again, like really nice use of these really vibrant colors in a way where it still feels quite harmonious. And so that's great. I think the one thing that I would probably do different, staying with the same style, do different is this character at the bottom seems to have a lot of importance, but doesn't really attract the same level of importance that I think it's meant to have. This pumpkin head person. Um, if, if I was going to do this, perhaps I would do something like, you know,
Iris is saying, "I hope someone is recording," but Bobby himself is
I'm
recording. So
recording, Ira. You're
yeah.
going to get a unlisted link, okay, where everybody can rewatch this. Um, yeah, and you can see like as I darken the head a little bit. Oops, where is this going? As I darken the head a little bit, it starts to form more of a silhouette with the character's body, and then all of a sudden things are unifying a bit more. Add back in some details of the pumpkin, and now there's starting to become more importance.
Test.
Hi, I could hear you.
Welcome,
Oh,
Ira.
finally. Oh,
Yay.
I was struggling there. Okay. Thank you for all the feedback.
Oh, you're very welcome. I hope it helps.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the Rapidash piece is a bit of an old one. I don't have it on my main site for that reason, but thank you definitely for the feedback on the color and intensity for the nighttime piece. I really appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Yeah, and so you see, as I'm creating more of the same kind of tones on this character, we start to notice it more and more.
Making more of a silhouette, I see.
Yeah, and then like look at before, right? Your eye starts to wander a lot more.
Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you.
Oh, you're very welcome. This next one here is really interesting too. So you have these lizards. but one actually feels more realistic than the other. It's like it feels like you figured out this texture more than you figured out this texture.
I'm sorry,
Or
which
okay,
one is
so
the more realistic?
let me see here. This one here with the green
Mm,
lizard. The green
yes.
lizard, the texture feels more thought out than the yellow, uh, orangey red spotted lizard.
Okay.
Right, the orangey red spotted lizard feels more stylized, more illustrative than the other one. That's all.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
Cool. And then yeah, the drapery. The part about the drapery is, or that can really help, is like to think about, okay, this area is scrunchy. Maybe this area is not scrunchy. It's more like, it's more like, what's the word? Like the cloth is stretching due to gravity trying to pull the cloth down. And then we get into armpit and it gets scrunchy again. What happens in between this area where the cloth is being affected by gravity trying to pull the cloth down, stopped by the shoulder, and between the scrunchy area, what happens in this area to transition from this area to the scrunchy area? Because one is actually the direct opposite of the other. One is due to stretching. The shoulder is due to stretching, right? The other is due to compression. And then if there's an elbow here, if the elbow touched the cloth, then the cloth, it would start to do more like this kind of thing, stretching again, but this time not due to gravity, but due to the elbow. Right? And it's like, how do you go from this to something that feels like stretching due to gravity? How do we go from this to this? Exactly like that. Right? So, and you finesse it a bit, and how does this part turn into this elbow? Right? You're creating a loop, some sort of a loop, and it's going to start to go towards that elbow. Right?
I
So now you're
see.
going from the squishy to the stretched. I could totally go into that, like, so much more, but I'm going to stop myself. Because fur, skin, wrinkles, yeah, I could go on forever.
That's Bobby's jam.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ira.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, Rebecca, you're next. Are you here?
Hi,
Fantastic work, Rebecca.
thank you.
Now, this one, I just kind of wanted to just say fantastic work. It's an illustrative style. And as an illustrative style, I don't have too much to say about it. I just want to appreciate it.
Thanks.
If you wanted to work in more like something that has more realism to it, though, then you're going to want to start working on some subtleties of especially your textures. So that right now you're doing really well. You have different feeling textures. Just currently, they don't feel real. They feel illustrative. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah. I know it's one of the many things that I need to work on. But yeah, I
Super
agree.
simple. Uh, Jonathan Hardesty has a whole entire course all about textures. And the really great thing about that course in particular is he teaches you how to think about textures because he breaks it down into like, think about like 6 different attributes, which I've never heard before. And the way that he broke it down was like fantastic. Um, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I will definitely look into it because I need any help what I can get.
Well, you don't, you like, yeah, it will definitely help you. You don't need that much help. You're a really great artist. But it'll definitely help you a lot. That was it. Some of these, I don't want to find any holes or poke too much. I just want to give them their due and just say, like, this is wonderful. This is one of them where I'm just like, this is wonderful. Same with some of the other ones before. Uh, a few of them, but one that stands out is actually Richard's in the very beginning as well. Like, this felt really professional. I just wondered about the different styles here from this image to this image. That really kind of can be concerning um, if I'm reviewing portfolios. That could be something that stops me from calling that person.
Um, Actually, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm I'm aiming to be a character concept artist, and what do you think I should be improve next to the materials, obviously, but looking through my works, what is the main like
Mm.
mistake what I'm doing or some weak spots what you see?
Materials, lighting, and gesture. Like with
Okay.
the standing poses, those look fine. But when you get into motion, it feels a little less natural. So that's why I was saying the poses. Uh, Alex Wu is the one that really helped me. His gesture drawing class is all about posing. And now we have expressive characters with Wouter Tulp that also is all about posing. Um, yeah, the lighting is another one where I wonder, because with this lighting, it's ambient light and it's almost like they're in a studio. Same with this. Um, However, this setup is not good for this jewel glowing because this jewel glowing doesn't fit this lighting setup. If it was this kind of lighting setup, you probably wouldn't see that jewel glow too much at all. Especially the
Mm-hmm.
color of light that it is. A red light is not that powerful.
Mm-hmm. So
And
it
then
would be better if I have like more direct light from the side, for example, and have the gem glowing in the front or something like
things
that.
to think about. Yeah, things to
Mm-hmm.
think about.
Okay.
Uh, and then the color of light. Like this one, for example, the lighting here, it feels very illustrative because it doesn't make sense with the scene. We're not sure
Mm-hmm.
why this person is lit. Like, where is the light coming from? So that's why it feels more illustrative.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's great.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You have a lot of promise with these characters and your costumes. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's go on to the last one here. Tunser? I hope I
Hello.
pronounced that right.
Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful work here. My goodness. Another one where it's like I barely even want to say anything about it because it's so great. Um, but let's say some stuff about it.
Yeah. Go for it.
I want to go to this creature here, which is so bloody cool looking. It's this like wolf plant kind of creature that's so neat. Um, I love the little sketches here. It makes this feel like professional work. Uh,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. It's really neat. I love the little bits of notes here as well. Makes it, again, it feels like professional work. And I love how you put a little thing at the bottom here, because a lot of times you'll see professional work with a little thing at the bottom. So
Exactly.
if this wasn't professional, like for a job, yeah, you tricked me. That's great.
Yeah.
Another one where it's like the setup here is fantastic. It does make a difference. This feels like something, again, that's client work or something where your whole entire job is designing a character. You see the back, you see the front, material indications. Uh, Wonderful. The hands are designed. They're not human hands with some sort of fictional texture, but they are thought about, right? Which is really great. The feet are not feet. They are not paws either. It's in between. It's thought out. Great. The materials here have history to them. It's not shiny and new. It's telling a story that enhances the feeling of this character. What I would change about it, because this feels like a character that's more for a game. I say this because of the proportions. A lot of times the proportions make something feel like game art as opposed to live action
Yeah.
film, like some sort of fantasy film or something. Right? Like imagine these hands in a live action film with this head.
Be too big.
So if it is a game, then I would just put more emphasis on the important elements that the player might have earned that is on this character.
Yeah.
So like I would probably make this gun a lot bigger. I wouldn't say probably. I would make the gun a lot bigger. Not just
Okay.
because you would notice it more. I would make it more flashy and stuff so that it feels as special as I need it to feel. Currently, it doesn't feel special. You almost don't notice it. But
Yeah.
here's where, I'm just going to pick on it a bit as like an art director kind of role. How's that character going to use that gun?
it's a it's based off of a old like early they were like doing really funky designs. It's called a turret pistol, but I did a cannon. It's a turret cannon revolver. So the wheel spins and it shoots straight. Like each time it spins like
Well, either way, it's a rhetorical question, really. Like, it it shouldn't need some sort of explanation.
Yeah, that's true.
We should just be able to see it and go, okay, I want that gun in that store, for my big character or whatever. Currently, I wouldn't want that gun. It feels like that's the default first gun that you get when you start the game, and it could barely kill anything.
Yeah.
I want this big, chunky, rusty, crazy gun that looks like it's going to shoot in my face at the same time as it shoots the enemies.
I get that so much and it's the funniest thing.
Yeah, and then the other thing I would kind of pick on is like you did such a good job on the hand here. This hand is much smaller,
Oh
and
yeah,
it
yeah.
feels like it needs work.
Yeah. I think
Um,
at that point I had spent about a week and I was starting to get blind.
Honestly, it's wonderful. I know I'm saying a bunch of stuff I
No,
would
no,
change about it, but
it's completely fine. I understand.
this one here, I'm just looking at it and going, what a awesome opportunity. And what am I talking about here? I see this green here. It looks like some sunlight is penetrating through, hitting this log. Where else is it hitting on the water? We could have spots of light that help to guide the eye. It could help to guide the eye to these, they look like tombstones or something, but they are not really noticed very much when we glance at this. We notice the rocks, right? We notice this guy, and we notice these tombstone things much later, if at all. And so that would be my first thing to want to kind of fix here, is to put more of a spotlight on these tombstones. And I could do that by showing other indications of where spots of light have fallen through the cracks of the forest and now are lighting up certain areas, right? And use that to put whatever amount of influence that you want, or like attention that you want onto these tombstones. The fog is also taking away a bunch of the attention currently, but you could use that atmospheric fog, if you still want to keep it, to actually frame these tombstones even more. Like you can bring that fog right up to the edge of these tombstones, right? So
Yeah.
it creates more of a silhouette and stuff. The other thing that's this wonderful opportunity here,
Yep.
not even sure if I could find it. Let me see.
Also, like
Uh-huh.
lighting has been a huge issue with me. Like whenever I do something, I do everything evenly lit because I'm coming from like a 10-year 3D background, so I tend to want to like show everything. But yeah, that definitely makes sense to make it more cinematic slash illustratory, more composition. Yeah, I need to play with the lighting a lot more, especially to help guide the eye. So,
Wonderful. I'm glad to hear. Yeah, I was saying that there's also this other kind of missed opportunity here. I'm just trying to find an example to show everyone, but man, next time I find this thing, I'm gonna just bookmark it or something. And this is kind of an example. If you can see my shared screen here.
yeah.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so this is by Bill Cohn. I have one of his originals that I bought many years ago. That I'm very proud of. But he paints in pastels. Not that that matters. What I wanted to show you is this purple. You see how there's this subtle purplish kind of hue here on the water? Right? Where's that
Yeah, yeah.
from? You win a digital fake cookie if you can get this right.
But the purple, the murkiness of the swamp.
The purple. Where does the purple come from? I wonder if I could find a different example of another painting.
Like
Shabby water.
algae on the water,
No.
growing in it.
Darn.
I didn't know I was gonna be tested. I would have studied.
People are saying clouds glazing.
No.
No. Kira saying atmospheric light
Atmospheric
diffusion.
No.
Yeah.
Mosquito larvae.
No. I'm just still looking for another example so people can still guess a little bit longer.
Inuits is saying imagination. Which I like.
No. Any other guesses?
Red algae, which is already mentioned by Tensor, sort of. Sunshine and sky movement.
The sky. The blue of
Sky?
the sky.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is the sky okay?
Water's so cool because it's like it could be a reflection. It could be see-through like glass. It could be so many different things. Shoot, I'm still trying to find. There's like this wonderful painting of these ducks that I just have stared at so many times, which is the perfect example of how amazing that kind of a water situation can be to paint. Because you can, let's go back to your water situation here. So
I
this,
just want to mention Courts of Julian and Ruskies get points because they said sky. Sorry.
hey, pew pew pew, you got points. All right. So this water situation here, you're going to see areas of that are transparent. You can see through it, and then you can see areas that are reflective, that could be reflective. And then we're dealing with the light from the sun. Okay, so the purple comes from the sky, the light of the sky, which is not the yellow, right? It's the blue. And when that comes down and hits the water, it gives a purple. And then the light from the sun comes down and hits and lights up these spots, right? So let me try to, my pen was having some issues earlier. Let me see if it's kind of fixed now. So that's not the purple. Hold on. And like I said, purple is extremely powerful, so I'm going to tone down the saturation a bunch. And then, to find the right purple and to mix it in correctly, a lot of times, I just take my best stab at things and then go backwards. Right, so I could grab this blue here. And make a layer that is only going to paint on top of that purple, tone down my opacity until it feels more natural. And now I have purple there. Oops, I could merge it. Okay, and then I have purple there that wasn't there before. Okay, and then you can have areas here where it's like it also lights up too from the sun.
Oh,
Huh?
oh Bobby, could you zoom in a little bit on what you're doing with the water? Like people are asking
Oh,
if they can see it a
let
little
me
bit
zoom
bigger.
in the end if that's all right, because
Okay.
like I can't paint it as well when I'm like super zoomed in. I gotta like
Yeah.
look at the whole entire image, but I will zoom in.
Thank you.
Okay, so this one,
What's so funny? The moment when you said pew pew pew, there was this guy in chat. He's called pew pew pew, and they said, "Someone call me." Which was uh, yeah, good banter in Discord.
okay, so it's a little, I hope you get the idea here. Just thinking, where would I put in the reflection? I'd probably put in the reflection here. So this scenario, you can have parts that are see-through. I would probably put that as the areas that would be see-through for some reason. It just kind of hits me more. It's the part that would be see-through. And this part here would be reflections of the trees, the silhouettes of the trees, right? And
Yeah.
in between those reflections, you could find areas that are affected by the light coming down, not a reflection of the sky, but the light from the sky coming down and hitting the water. Isn't that
Right.
awesome? And that's what gives you
Yeah.
the purple. And then back here is like light because of the sun coming through the sky, breaking
Mm.
through and finding spots in the forest.
Got it. Okay. Very nice.
And we haven't even talked about the motion and the bubbles. I could go on about this stuff too. It's
Right. Yeah.
awesome. What a great setup.
I like the mystery of the purplish color, which is really fun.
Right? And it does, like, let's just pull back those little adjustments there.
No, yeah. Give it way more depth.
Mhm.
All right. So thank you everybody for
Thank you.
turning something in so we could talk about it.
Yeah, thank you for all the brave people who has faced us with their portfolio and really good. We have 3 minutes left, Bobby. So I think we have maybe one question that we try to
Oh,
answer.
sure. Yeah.
There's a question from Cyrus. Right now, I'm heavily reliant on references. What is your suggestion to help one transition from using references for most of the painting to start drawing from imagination?
Yeah, like do your references in a way where you know that you're going to be painting this thing without looking at it later, and then do that. In my I'm going to give a little plug because it's the perfect plug. Like in my digital painting class, I actually talk about this because I paint nothing but imaginative stuff generally. And so one of the assignments, lesson 7, is I give this figure, this just profile figure. I'm like, paint it, right? And then the next day we're going to paint it again, but in a different way. And then the next day we're going to paint the mirror image of it while staring at the regular image. So you can't flip it and try to paint it that way too. And then the next day and next day, and then we get to imaginative. Okay, now paint it out of your head. And you know it's coming. So as you're doing these paintings over and over again, you're going, okay, what color is this? Why is this over here? How does this make sense? And you start to tie things together. And now you're not just copying something out of real life, but you're understanding and you're building something that makes sense like real life. It might be the same result, but it's a totally different thinking. But that kind of thinking allows you to add in a draft that wasn't there in the beginning, right? Because you're understanding how to build this world now as opposed to copying uh, a photo.
I also want to mention we have a study group recently started with your course, Bobby. So
Oh,
yeah, in case people are interested in doing schoolism and participate with other fellow schoolism members, we have an open class for Bobby's course. So make sure to tune in.
let me know.
Um,
Let me know when it is. My schedule is bonkers right now, but if I can get in there, I will.
will do. And yeah, then I suggest thank you, and we'll wrap this up. Thank you, Bobby, for reviewing everyone's portfolio. For people who are like interested, and we are definitely doing this again, so keep an eye out in the announcements. We have a special role for portfolio review, so you'll get a little ping when the next one is up. And just to wrap things up, we have study hall with CJ this Thursday. We have the tavern drink and draw with Jonathan and Sophia, which is also good fun. Be sure to tune in on those events. And we have a schools and webinar coming up with Greg Hopwood, exploring costume concept for TV and film. However, this one is a subscription required, so make sure to have your Schoolsum sub ready. And yeah, Greg is known of like The Boys, Titans, Marvel's Agatha, Coven of Chaos, so that will be like fantastic. Definitely don't want to miss
Yeah,
out.
that's super cool. I'm excited about that one too. I love The Boys is such a crazy fun show.
Mm, true. And we have Victor Kalvachev's webinar coming up pretty soon,
Hmm.
character driven with posing. So, in case you wanna post your artwork for that, we have open submissions for portfolios until the end of today. And John will place a link like how to post and where. It will be emailed to info@schoolism.com. So yeah, this is it for us, guys. I hope you guys liked our event, and I will make sure to put an announcement out when the recording is ready. So keep an eye on
Fantastic.
our announcements.
And big shout out to you, Patricia. Thank you so much for helping and hosting this with me.
Oh, thank you, Bobby. Okay, so have a good one, everyone. Happy time zones, and bye bye.